You have spoken to the goddess every morning for 16 years. Every morning, without exception. Through illness, through grief, through doubt, every morning you have stood before her and spoken. She has never answered. You have never needed her to. The speaking was enough. The ritual was enough. The meaning was enough. Today, the mountain will open, and for the first time in 16 years, you will not know what the silence means. Before we begin, this is the story of a priest of Isis on the last day of Pompeii. The Temple of Isis in Pompeii was one of the most important religious sites in the city. The cult of Isis had come from Egypt and spread through the Roman world, finding particular purchase in port cities and trading centers. Places where people from many origins mixed, and where the familiar gods of Rome sometimes felt insufficient for the lives people were actually living. Isis was a goddess of many things: magic, healing, the dead, the living, the moon and the Nile, and the deep mystery of things that could not be explained by daylight. Her priests shaved their heads and wore white linen, and performed the daily rituals with a precision that had been refined over centuries. A living tradition carried from Egypt to Rome to this city on the Bay of Naples, where the mountain watched and the sea glittered, and people came to her temple with their griefs and their hopes and their questions. You have been her priest for 16 years. You came to this calling as a young man, drawn by something you still cannot fully explain, a sense that the world contained more than what was visible, and that the visible world was a kind of language whose grammar you wanted to understand. You are 41 years old. You know her temple the way you know your own hands. In this story, you are him. This is your day, and the goddess is about to be very quiet. You wake in darkness and lie still for a moment. This is the first practice of the day. The lying still, not sleep, not thought, a deliberate emptying. The Isis tradition asks this of its priests. Before the day fills you, before the rituals begin, before the world presents its demands, there must be a space of nothing, a few breaths of pure quiet. You have done this every morning for 16 years, and it remains each time briefly difficult and then briefly perfect. The room you sleep in is small and plain. The temple provides quarters for its priests behind the main sanctuary, simple rooms without decoration beyond a small painted image of the goddess on the wall above the door. The paint is old, done by a craftsman before your time. The colors slightly faded. Isis stands in her traditional posture, arms wide, at the solar disk between her horns, her expression neither smiling nor severe. In certain lights she looks as if she is about to speak. In certain lights she looks as if she has already spoken and is waiting for you to understand. You rise. You wash your hands and face in the basin by the door. The water is cold. You wash carefully, thoroughly, because the first washing of the day is not hygiene alone. It is a transition from the private person who sleeps and dreams to the priest who serves. The water marks the border. You dress in white linen. The linen is fresh, laundered yesterday by the temple servants. It is finely woven, cooler than wool, and it moves differently when you walk. A slight whisper of fabric that you associate so deeply with the priesthood that you cannot imagine wearing anything else in this space. You go to the sanctuary. There is a particular quality to a sacred space before anyone else has entered it. A temple in the hour before dawn carries something that it does not carry at midday, when the supplicants come, and the incense fills the air, and the voices of many people, wanting many things, fill every corner. Before all that, in the dark and the quiet, the space holds something that feels older than the building itself. You light the first lamp, the flame catches and moves, and the walls of the sanctuary come alive with shadows. The statue of Isis stands at the far end of the sanctuary. She is life-sized, carved in marble, painted in the traditional colors. The white linen dress, the black hair, the gold of the solar disk. Her arms are at her sides in this rendering, her palms turned slightly outward, and a posture of offering or of reception, depending on how you read it. After 16 years, you have stopped deciding which. It is both. It is neither. It is something that does not reduce to either word. You stand before her and begin the morning prayer. The words are ancient. You learned them phonetically first, in a language that was not Latin, the old Egyptian that the tradition requires for the sacred rites. You learned the sounds before you learned the meanings, and then the meanings came slowly, and then the sounds and the meanings fused, and now they are simply the words, indivisible, neither foreign nor familiar. Your voice is low in the empty sanctuary. The lamp flame moves slightly in a draft you cannot identify, throwing your shadow large and wavering against the wall. The incense from yesterday still lingers in the air, faint and sweet, frankincense from the east, brought by a merchant who supplies several temples in the region. You speak the words. You make the gestures. You bow 3 times at the prescribed moments. The goddess stands. She has always stood. In 16 years of mornings, she has stood exactly as she stands now, her painted eyes forward, her posture of offering or reception unchanged. You have prayed to her through illness and through grief and through the ordinary doubts that come to anyone who has spent long enough in a vocation to see it clearly. She has always stood. You have always spoken. This is the relationship. You have found it sufficient. Faith is not the absence of doubt. You learned this early. Faith is continuing the practice in the presence of doubt. Continuing to speak even when the answer does not come. Continuing to stand before the silence and mean something by it. You have done this for 16 years. The silence has never troubled you. It has been until now a comfortable silence. At sunrise, you open the temple doors. This is the second ritual of the day, the opening. The great cedar doors of the temple of Isis face east, and when you draw them back, the morning light enters the sanctuary in a single broad shaft, illuminating the air, catching the last of the night's incense smoke, falling across the base of the goddess's statue. You have positioned yourself so that on certain particular mornings, when the angle of the sun and the season align correctly, the light reaches the goddess's face directly. This morning is one of those mornings. You step back and watch the light move across her features. It happens slowly, the shaft brightening as the sun clears the eastern buildings, the light strengthening and warming from pale gold to something richer. When it reaches her face, you hold still. You have held still at this moment many times. It does not require anything of you except stillness and attention. The light holds for perhaps 3 minutes, then the sun continues its arc and the shaft moves off her face, and the ordinary morning light of the sanctuary returns. You breathe. The first supplicants arrive within the hour. They come through the open doors with the habitual slightly lowered heads of people entering a sacred space, some genuinely reverent, some performing reverence, some somewhere between the two. You have learned not to judge the quality of their devotion. The goddess receives all of it. A woman with a sick child, an old man with a quiet request he doesn't speak aloud, only pressing a folded piece of papyrus into your hands and bowing. A young couple, clearly anxious. They asking about the correct offering for a journey they are undertaking. You attend to each of them with care. This is the work, not the mystical parts, not the moments of light on the goddess's face. The work is standing here in the morning and attending to people who have come because they need something that the ordinary world has not been able to give them. The priesthood is not about the priest. This is the first and most important thing you learned, and you have to relearn it periodically, because the human tendency is always to drift back toward the self. The temple is not yours. The goddess is not yours. You are the intermediary, the person who keeps the space open and the practice going so that others can find their way to something larger than their ordinary lives. The second ritual of the day begins at the 3rd hour. You change your linen robe for the ceremonial one, white with a border of blue that represents the Nile. You take the sistrum, the sacred rattle, from its cabinet beside the altar. The sistrum is bronze, ancient, brought from Egypt by the priest who established this temple 2 generations ago. When you shake it, the sound is dry and rhythmic, small metal loops striking a bar, a sound unlike any other instrument you know. It is not beautiful in the way music is beautiful. It is functional in the way a key is functional. It opens something. You light the incense. Frankincense first, then kaifi, the Egyptian compound blend whose recipe the tradition guards carefully. Honey and raisins and wine and aromatic resins, mixed and aged and burned in small, careful quantities. The smoke rises thickly, gray-white, fragrant in a way that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but simply right. The smell of this specific practice, inseparable now from everything you associate with the sacred. You pour the water. This is the central act of the Isis morning ritual, the libation that represents the Nile's flooding, the gift of life from the river to the land. The water is from the temple's own cistern, clean and cold. You pour it into the offering bowl before the statue in a slow, deliberate stream. You speak the words that accompany this act, the ones that name the water as the source of all things, the ones that ask the goddess to receive this offering and extend her protection over the city and its people. The water settles in the bowl. The smoke rises. The sistrum is still. You stand outside through the open doors of the temple. You can hear Pompeii going about its mourning, the market sounds, the voices, the wheels on stone, the city that surrounds this temple and depends on it, in ways both practical and otherwise, for something that keeps it coherent. Every ritual is a conversation with time. You are doing what was done before you and what will be done after you. The priest who carried this sistrum before you is dead. The priest who will carry it after you is not yet born. You stand between them, holding the practice, keeping it alive, passing it forward. This is not a small thing. In the afternoon, you work on the inscription. The temple's east wall needs new text. The paint of an old dedicatory inscription has faded to illegibility, and you have been tasked with replacing it. You are not a professional painter, but you have trained in the lettering required for temple inscriptions, the formal script that records dedications and honors, and the names of those who gave. You mix the pigment in a small clay bowl. Red ochre, the traditional color for this type of text, ground fine and mixed with a binding agent, the consistency of thick honey. You take the brush, fine-haired, the kind used for detailed work. You begin with the first letter. You work slowly, each stroke deliberate. The wall surface is slightly rough under the brush, the plaster old and settled, and the pigment catches in the texture, and you learn the wall as you go, adjusting pressure and speed to what this particular surface requires. The inscription reads, in translation, "To Isis, Queen of Heaven, protector of this city given in gratitude by those who dwell in her shadow." You have read these words many times. You have spoken variations of them in prayers. Today, writing them letter by letter, you find them doing something slightly different in you than they usually do. A small discomfort, not doubt exactly. More like the feeling of a word you have said so many times it has temporarily lost its meaning, and you are waiting for it to return. You paint. The afternoon light moves across the wall. The letters accumulate, red on white. Outside, the city continues. Language that has been repeated long enough becomes landscape. You move through it without examining it, the way you move through a familiar street without seeing the buildings. Sometimes something makes you stop and look. The letters on the wall today are making you stop and look. Protector of this city. You look at the words and wait for them to mean what they have always meant. They mean it. Of course they mean it. You dip the brush and continue. Late in the afternoon, A man comes to the temple with a question you cannot answer. He is middle-aged, a merchant by the look of him, the kind of man you see often in this temple because the merchant class in Pompeii has a particular relationship with Isis. Trade requires trust, and trust requires something to anchor it, and many merchants have found that anchor here. He has been to the temple before. You recognize his face without knowing his name. Yet he comes to you directly rather than to the offering area, which means he wants to speak rather than simply pray. You receive him in the small room beside the sanctuary that serves as a consultation space, 2 chairs, a small table, a lamp. He sits. He looks at his hands for a moment, then he looks at you. "I need to know," he says, "whether the goddess protects those who do wrong in order to survive, whether the protection extends to that." You look at him. His face holds something complicated, a weight he has been carrying for some time. You think about the question carefully before you answer. This is what you do. You do not offer comfort before you have understood what the person is actually asking. What does surviving require, in your case? You ask. He is quiet for a long moment. Then he tells you something, and you listen without interruption. When he finishes, you sit with what he has said for a moment before speaking. "The goddess does not require perfection," you say finally. "She requires honesty. What you carry honestly, or you do not lay it down." He nods. He is not satisfied, but he is slightly lighter. This is usually the best that can be offered. You walk him out. The questions that come to a temple are rarely the ones that can be answered cleanly. They are the questions that the ordinary world has no room for. The ones too large or too painful or too complicated for a conversation over dinner. People bring them here because here is one of the few places that will receive them without flinching. You have received a great many questions in 16 years. You have answered almost none of them completely. But you have received them. This is not nothing. As the sun touches the western rooftops, you perform the closing ritual. The temple closes at sunset. This is the tradition. The goddess's day mirrors the sun's day, opening with it, closing with it. The evening ritual is the mirror of the morning, the water, the incense, the words. But where the morning ritual opens and invites, the evening ritual closes and releases. A different quality to the same gestures. You extinguish the daytime lamps one by one, leaving only the single eternal flame that burns in the inner sanctuary through the night, maintained by the duty priest in rotating shifts. Tonight, that duty falls to the youngest of the temple's priests, a man of 23 who has been here 2 years and who still approaches the sanctuary with a visible wonder that you find quietly moving. Wonder is hard to maintain. He still has it. You pour the closing libation. The water sound in the bowl is the same as the morning's, and yet distinct. Morning water is the beginning of a thing. Evening water is the completion of it, or that is how it has always felt. Today, there is a slight roughness in the feeling, like a thread that has caught on something. You pour the water and speak the words, and the words are correct and the gesture is correct, and something underneath all of it is slightly off. You finish the ritual. You stand before the goddess in the near dark, the eternal flame behind her, throwing her shadow forward so that it falls across the floor at your feet. You look at her face. The light from the flame does what it does, animates her slightly, makes the painted features seem less fixed, her expression neither smiling nor severe. Her arms at her sides, palms turned slightly outward. You speak to her. Not the formal words, but something else, something briefer and more direct. "What is it?" you say. "What am I not seeing?" The flame moves. The shadow shifts. The goddess stands. In 16 years, the silence has been full of meaning, full of presence, full of the accumulated weight of a practice that has held together through everything. Tonight, the silence feels different. Not empty, but different. as if the silence itself has changed shape. You sleep and you dream. The dream is not dramatic. Dreams of warning in the old stories are dramatic, full of imagery and symbol and divine figures speaking in clear voices. Your dream is quiet. You are standing in the sanctuary, and the eternal flame is burning, and everything is as it always is. And you are waiting for something, though you do not know what you are waiting for. The goddess is in her place. The incense smoke is there. The quality of the air is the quality of early morning before the first light. You wait, nothing comes. You simply wait in the dream for a long time. The flame does not go out. The goddess does not speak. The smoke rises, and the light does not change. You wake. The room is still dark. The city is quiet. Through the high window above your bed, you can see a narrow strip of sky, stars still visible. The air coming through the window smells ordinary, stone, the faint salt of the distant sea, the city. You lie still. You try to hold on to the dream, not because it contained anything, but because the feeling of it is still in your chest. The waiting, the long, specific quality of waiting for something that did not come. You have had this feeling before. In waking life, everyone has. You have simply never had it about this, about her. The mind at 3 a.m. is not the mind of the daylight hours. It has different permissions. It goes to places the daylight mind keeps carefully closed. You lie in the dark, and the question you would not ask in full daylight sits with you quietly. What if the silence is not presence? What if the silence is simply silence? You get up. You go to the sanctuary. You light a lamp. You sit before the goddess and wait for morning. The second morning ritual begins in a state you do not have a clean word for. Not doubt. Doubt is a position. This is something more like weather, a quality of the air in your chest, a slight difficulty in the breathing that has nothing to do with your lungs. You have slept badly. You are tired. These are ordinary explanations, and they may be sufficient. You proceed on the assumption that they are. The words of the morning prayer come out correctly. You do not stumble, do not substitute, do not miss a syllable. 16 years of practice means the words are not in your conscious mind at all. They live somewhere deeper, in the body, in the part of the brain that keeps the heartbeat going. You could say them in your sleep. You could say them while thinking about something else entirely. This morning, you are thinking about something else entirely. The dream, the question, the feeling in the dark at 3 a.m. You say the words and think about these things, and the words come out correctly anyway, which is either a comfort or a concern depending on how you look at it. You pour the morning water. You watch it settle in the bowl. The small ripples move outward from the center and reach the bowl's edge and die there. You look at the goddess. She looks back, her painted eyes forward, her expression as it has always been. You look at her with the slightly different attention of this morning, and you try to see something you have not seen before, something that will resolve the feeling in your chest into something nameable. You see what you have always seen, a remarkable piece of craftsmanship, a tradition made visible, and a space that has held the prayers of many people for many years. There is a difference between what a thing is and what a thing does. What the goddess is you cannot know with certainty. What she does you have watched for 16 years. She gives people a place to bring what they cannot carry alone. She organizes the day with meaning. She makes the water and the smoke and the words into something that exceeds the sum of those parts. Whatever she is, what she does is real. Hold on to that. You hold on to that. You finish the ritual. You open the temple doors. It is just past midday when the first tremor comes. You are in the small room reviewing the temple accounts, a task that requires nothing from you but attention and a stylus when the floor moves. Not violently, a slow roll, like the deck of a ship in a mild swell. The lamp on the table sways. The stack of wax tablets shifts, and one slides to the edge and stops there. You put your hand on the table. The tremor passes. You have felt tremors before. Pompeii sits in a region where the ground is restless and small tremors are not unusual. You make a note of it mentally and return to the accounts. 15 minutes later, the second tremor comes, stronger. This one you feel in your feet first, then in your legs, then in your chest. The lamp swings hard and the oil spills and the flame goes out. The tablet slides off the table and hits the floor. From the sanctuary you hear the sound of something falling, the offering bowl, you think, or perhaps the water vessel. You stand up and go to the door. The courtyard of the temple is still. The lemon tree in the corner has stopped moving, and its branches settling after the tremor. The sky above the courtyard walls is very blue and very still, and then you look north, over the roofline of the buildings beyond the temple wall, and you see the mountain. The top of it is gone. There is a gap between what the eyes see and what the mind accepts. You have heard that this gap exists. You have read accounts of it in old texts. You are inside it now, standing in the courtyard of the Temple of Isis, looking at a mountain whose peak has been replaced by something rising into the sky. And for several seconds you simply cannot accept what you are looking at. Then you can. And you go back inside. You go to the sanctuary. The offering bowl is on the floor, unbroken. The water has spread across the mosaic, a dark stain in the shape of the spill. The eternal flame is still burning. The goddess is on her plinth, undisturbed, her expression as it has always been. You stand in the wet sanctuary and look at her. Outside the temple walls, the city has begun to make a different kind of noise. Voices rising, not the ordinary voices of the market, something else, the sound of many people understanding the same thing at the same moment. Through the open doors of the temple, you can see the sky above the forum changing color, the deep blue shifting toward something yellower, dimmer. The first stones begin to fall. You hear them on the temple roof, small sounds, irregular like light hail. You look at the goddess. In 16 years, you have spoken to her every morning. You have asked for guidance and protection and clarity and the strength to do the work. You have asked for the city, for the people who come to this temple, for the sick and the frightened and the lost. You have asked with the words the tradition provides, and sometimes with your own words, and sometimes in the pre-language of before words, the direct address of one presence to another. You have never asked what you ask now. You ask it without the formal words. You ask it in the voice you use at 3 a.m, the voice that goes past the training and the tradition and the 16 years, the voice that is simply a person speaking. Why, you say? Why this? Why now? Why are you not stopping this? The goddess stands. The flame moves in a draft from the open doors, and the shadows shift. Outside, the stones fall heavier on the roof, and the voices of the city grow louder, and the sky continues to darken. The goddess stands, her arms at her sides, her palms turned slightly outward. You have answered this question for other people many times. You have sat in the small room and received the question in 100 different forms, and you have offered what you could. The goddess does not prevent suffering. She receives it. She does not explain. She endures. The practice is not a shield. It is a way of standing in the presence of what cannot be explained. You knew this. You have always known this. But knowing it and standing in a darkening sanctuary with stones falling on the roof are two different things. People begin arriving at the temple. This is not surprising. In a crisis, people go to the places that have held meaning for them. The Temple of Isis fills the way. It fills on feast days, quickly and with purpose, people coming through the doors with faces that are looking for something specific, something the streets outside cannot provide. You receive them. This is what you do. This is the work. Whatever is happening inside you, whatever question is living in your chest, The people coming through the door need what this space has always offered, and you are the person standing in it. You receive them, an old woman who comes every week, who has been coming since before you arrived. She goes directly to the statue and kneels and speaks without preamble, her lips moving, her hand clasped. You do not interrupt. She knows how to do this. A family, parents, and 3 children, the youngest perhaps 4 years old, Deborah held in her father's arms. The father looks at you over his daughter's head. He does not ask a question. He simply looks. You nod. You gesture toward the sanctuary. Come in. There is room. A young man who has never been here before, who stands in the doorway looking uncertain, looking at the statue, and at the people kneeling, and at you, the outside of the temple and the aside. You go to him. Come in, you say. You don't have to know what to do. Just come in. He comes in. He stands near the back wall. He looks at the goddess. The roof continues to receive the falling stones. The sky through the open doors is now a deep, wrong yellow. More people come. The temple is full. You have wanted this and feared this for 16 years. The full temple, the space, doing what it was built to do. Not on a feast day. Not with music and procession and the organized joy of celebration. Like this, in the falling ash, with the city coming apart outside and the people inside needing something solid to stand near. By mid-afternoon, the ash is falling in earnest. You close the great cedar doors, not because you are turning anyone away, but because the ash is coming through them in visible drifts now, settling on the sanctuary floor, coating the offering bowl, reaching even the base of the goddess's plinth. You close the doors and the light in the sanctuary changes, becomes the light of the lamps only, orange and close. The people inside the temple number, perhaps 40. They have arranged themselves in the way people arrange themselves in a crisis in a confined space. Some kneeling before the statue, some sitting against the walls, some standing in small groups talking in low voices, some alone and silent. The children are quiet in the way children go quiet when adults are frightened. The youngest ones are asleep against their parents. Because the body of a child will sleep through almost anything. You move through the temple. You speak to people. You answer questions when you can, and sit with the questions when you cannot. You bring water from the temple's cistern and distribute it. You keep the lamps filled. You do these things because they are the things to do, and because doing them keeps you from standing still in the middle of the sanctuary, staring at the goddess and asking the question that keeps returning. Why are you not stopping this? You do not ask it again out loud. But it is there. It has changed shape slightly since you first asked it. It is no longer an accusation. It is something more honest and more painful than an accusation. It is the question of a person who has organized their entire life around a belief and who is now standing in the middle of evidence that the belief may require more from them than they had previously understood. Faith is not the absence of doubt. You knew this, but you thought you knew it the way you know the words of a prayer, fluently and without effort. You are learning it now the other way, through the body, through the dark sanctuary and the falling ash and the 40 people looking at you, because you are the person who stands in this space and knows what it means. In the late afternoon, sitting against the wall of the sanctuary with your eyes closed, something shifts. Not a revelation, not a vision, not the goddess speaking in the clear voice of the old stories. Something quieter, a slight change in the quality of the question. You have been asking why she is not stopping this. The question assumes she stops things. The question assumes that the protection you have offered in her name, the protection you have accepted from her on behalf of the people who come to this temple, is the kind of protection that prevents catastrophe. But you have never actually believed that. Not in 16 years. You have sat in the small consultation room with people who have lost children, people whose businesses have failed, people dying of illness, people in every form of pain the world provides. You have never told them the goddess would prevent their suffering. You have told them she would receive it. You have told them the practice was a way of standing in the presence of what cannot be explained. You knew this. You have always known this, the falling ash, the darkening sky, and the city coming apart outside these walls. This is not the goddess failing to protect. This is the world being what the world has always been, enormous and indifferent and occasionally catastrophic. You have known this. The practice was never a shield against it. The practice was a way of not being alone inside it. You open your eyes. The sanctuary is full of people who came here because they did not want to be alone inside it. They came to the right place. The place is doing what it was built to do. The silence of the goddess is not punishment. It is not indifference. It is the silence of something that does not speak in words, that has never spoken in words, that speaks in the accumulated meaning of the practice itself. And in the water and the smoke and the words spoken by every priest who stood in this space before you and will stand in it after you, if after comes. You get up, you go to the people, you continue. You lead the people out when the tremors make the building unsafe. This is a practical decision made at the right moment, not too early and not too late. The walls of the temple have held. The goddess has not fallen. The roof has not come down. But the tremors are coming more frequently now, and the sounds the old stone makes under stress are sounds you do not want to push further. You open the doors. The air outside is thick with ash, gray and particulate, tasting of mineral and smoke. You distribute cloth from the temple stores so that people can cover their faces. You speak clearly. The harbor, the northern road, move in groups, do not separate. The people file out. You stand at the door and watch them go. The old woman who comes every week. The family with the 3 children. The young man who had never been here before. They move into the ashen street, and they are gone. You go back inside. The sanctuary is empty now, except for the lamps and the goddess and the ash that has settled on everything. A fine gray layer over the mosaic floor, over the offering bowl, over the base of the plinth. The eternal flame is still burning. You look at it for a moment. The flame that the tradition says must never go out. You take the flame carrier from its place beside the altar, a small clay vessel designed for exactly this, for carrying the flame when the temple must be evacuated. You transfer a portion of the eternal flame into it. You close the top. The flame is contained, portable, still alive. You look at the goddess one final time, her expression neither smiling nor severe. Her arms at her sides, palms turned slightly outward. Offering or reception? Both. Neither. Something that does not reduce to a word. You bow 3 times as the ritual requires. I understand now, you say. Not to the silence, to her. I understand what I misunderstood. You pick up the flame carrier. You walk through the sanctuary. You go through the cedar doors into the gray street. Behind you, the temple of Isis stands in the falling ash. Its doors open, its lamps burning, its goddess on her plinth with her arms at her sides and her palms turned slightly outward. The eternal flame is gone from the inner sanctuary, but you are carrying it. The practice does not end when the building becomes unsafe. The practice is not the building. The practice is the water and the smoke and the words and the attention you bring to it. And these things are portable. They travel with you. They survive what the walls do not survive. The goddess is in the marble and the paint and also in what you carry out through the door. This is what you misunderstood. She was never only in the temple. You walked into the ash. The flame stayed lit. The city burned behind you. The practice continued forward, carried in your hands, going wherever you were going, which you did not yet know, but which you would arrive at. This you were certain of. This you had always been certain of, even at 3 in the morning, even in the dream where nothing came. The arriving, the continuing, the next morning, wherever it came. A note on history. The Temple of Isis in Pompeii is one of the best preserved ancient temples in the world. It was among the first buildings excavated after Pompeii's rediscovery in the 18th century, and the temple was rebuilt after an earthquake in 62 AD, and was fully functioning at the time of the eruption in 79 AD. Inside the temple, archaeologists found ritual objects, statues, inscriptions, and the remains of food offerings. The cult of Isis was one of the most widespread mystery religions in the Roman world, attracting followers from many social backgrounds. Her priests underwent rigorous initiation and maintained daily rituals with great precision. The sistrum found in the Temple of Isis in Pompeii is now in the National Archaeological Museum of Naples. The temple's frescoes, depicting scenes from Egyptian mythology, are among the finest surviving examples of Roman religious art. Whether any priests of Isis were in the temple when Vesuvius erupted is not known. The temple was found empty of human remains. The doors were open, and the eternal flame did not survive, but the tradition that carried it did. The worship of Isis continued for centuries after Pompeii. Wherever the practice went, someone was carrying it. Someone always is. Good night.